Hey everyone, it's Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. The year is still fresh, only 14 days in, and we've already had a lot of wild weather to talk about. Today is no different. We've got cold, we've got snow, and unfortunately, we've also got something very serious going on out on the West Coast. If you're tuning in from California or you've been keeping up with the news, you've likely heard about the devastating wildfires out there. We're diving into those fire conditions first, because honestly, it's a life and death situation for some people. And it's important to get this information out there. So here's the dot, a weather system rolling down from the Pacific Northwest, creating a trough over the western part of the country. This setup is going to lead to intense Santa Ana winds over the next 3 days. If you're familiar with those, you already know they're bad news during wildfire season. These winds are fast, they're dry, and they create a perfect storm for spreading fires. Let's talk specifics. These Santa Ana winds are coming in strong from the northeast, blowing south and west and gusting anywhere between 50 and 70 miles per hour. It's powerful enough to knock things over. But when you add in the bone dry air with humidity levels dropping to about 10 Cs, it's a recipe for disaster. These winds heat up as they move over the mountains and through the canyons, making the air even drier. That's how you end up with conditions that are not just favorable for wildfires, but extreme. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. If you're in Southern California, this means the areas around Los Angeles, Long Beach, Riverside, San Diego, and even down past Ventura Valley are all at risk. The National Weather Service has issued a PDS, particularly dangerous situation, red flag warning. That's as serious as it gets when it comes to fire weather. Today, we're looking at extremely critical conditions, and it's not going to stop here. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the critical conditions will spread to an even larger area. By Thursday, we may see some slight improvement, but it's still going to be risky. Here's what this means for anyone in the affected areas. Have an evacuation plan. If you don't need it, great. But if you do, you'll be glad you were ready. Keep your phones charged, stay updated with local alerts, and make sure you know the best route to get out if it comes to that. The last thing you want is to be scrambling at the last minute. Now, the good news is that some of the fires from last week are more under control, but that doesn't mean we can let our guard down. Any spark, a down power line, a campfire that wasn't put out properly, or even something as simple as a car pulling over into dry grass could ignite a new fire. And with these winds, that fire could spread rapidly. My thoughts are with everyone dealing with this. It's going to be a long, tough week for Southern California, and we'll be keeping a close eye on it. If you're not in the area, but you know someone who is, check in on them. Just make sure they're aware of the risks and that they have a plan in place. All right, shifting gears now to the rest of the country. While the fires are a localized issue, the rest of the U.S. is gearing up for a major cold snap. We're looking at one of the coldest January patterns we've seen in years, and it's going to stick around for a while. Here's what's happening. A massive trough is forming over the continental United States, and it's going to pull down Arctic air, blanketing most of the central and eastern U.S. with temperatures well below average. This isn't your typical January cold. This is prolonged, anomalously cold air that's going to make the past few Januaries look mild by comparison. Now, there's a brief period coming up where warmer air is going to sneak into parts of the central U.S., the Pacific Northwest, and even Western Canada. Some areas might see temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above average, like a little midwinter reprieve. But don't get too excited because it's not going to last long. By the 19th or 20th, that Arctic air is coming in, and it's going to dominate the weather pattern for at least a week, maybe longer. The GFS ensemble models, basically a collection of multiple weather model runs, are showing incredible consistency here. When we see this level of agreement across so many runs, it's a strong signal that something big is coming. From January 19th through the 24th, most of the country is going to be feeling the chill with only a few exceptions. Maine, southern Florida, Alaska, and Hawaii, everyone else, bundle up. It's going to be cold. And when you get a pattern like this, snowstorms are almost inevitable. The Climate Prediction Center has highlighted a large area with a 20/40 chance of heavy snow between January 18th and 24th. That's a broad time frame, but it gives us an idea of where to watch. Now, let me address something you're probably going to see on social media. As these models develop, you're going to hear a lot of talk about historic blizzards or comparisons to past storms, like the blizzard of 77 or the superstorm of 93. Don't fall for the hype just yet. Any forecast more than 5 days out is speculative at best. It's fun to look at, but it's not reliable. Once we're within that 5 day range, we can start talking specifics. Until then, focus on the overall pattern, not individual storms. Meanwhile, up in the Midwest and Northeast, we're still feeling the effects of a recent snow event. Several inches of snow have already fallen in some areas, and there's more on the way. Lake effect snow is going to be a big player today, especially around Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. If you're in cities like Buffalo or Syracuse, expect to see snow continuing to pile up. This is the kind of snow that just keeps coming, driven by cold air passing over the relatively warmer lake waters. Some areas could see significant accumulations, especially closer to Lake Ontario, where we're talking about totals potentially reaching 20 to 30 inches in the hardest hit spots. It's going to be a snowy day for sure. Out west, the story is a bit different. Things are quiet weather-wise, but unfortunately, wildfires are still a major concern near Los Angeles and other parts of Southern California. The dry and windy conditions over the next couple of days are creating the perfect environment for fires to continue spreading. The good news is that later this week, we'll see a shift in the weather pattern. More moisture will move in and the winds will die down, which should help firefighters get a handle on things. Until then, though, the risk remains high. So if you're in that area, stay safe and follow any evacuation orders. Now, let's talk about the big picture because things are about to change in a big way as we head into the weekend. The driving force behind this upcoming cold spell is the jet stream, which is basically the highway in the sky for weather systems. Right now, the jet stream is mostly flat with a westerly flow dominating much of the country. This setup is allowing for some warmer air to creep into the Midwest and Ohio Valley as we head toward the middle of the week. In fact, by Thursday and Friday, many areas will see above average temperatures, a welcome break from the colder than normal conditions we've had for most of January. But don't get too comfortable because this warm spell is going to be short-lived. By the time we hit the weekend, the jet stream is going to take a dramatic dip southward. This is where things get interesting. The polar jet stream, which has been hanging out far to the north over Canada, is going to plunge deep into the United States, bringing with it a surge of Arctic air. This cold air will first hit the Great Plains and Midwest before spreading eastward into the Ohio Valley, Northeast, and even parts of the Southeast. We're talking about temperatures dropping well below average for much of the country. And in some places, it could be the coldest air of the season so far. This Arctic blast is going to be intense. By Saturday, temperatures in the northern plains could be as low as 20 to 25 def. And when you factor in the wind chill, it could feel even colder, possibly as low as a 60 def in some areas. That's the kind of cold that can be dangerous if you're not prepared. Frostbite can occur in just minutes with wind chills that low. So make sure you're bundling up if you have to be outside. The cold air will continue to spread over the weekend, reaching the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Northeast by Sunday and Monday. Even parts of the Southeast could see a big drop in temperatures with freezing conditions potentially reaching as far south as the Gulf Coast and Florida panhandle. Now let's talk snow. With this kind of cold air moving in, it's almost inevitable that we'll see some winter storms. The first one is likely to develop over the weekend, starting in the Midwest and Ohio Valley. While it's still too early to pin down exact details, current models suggest that this storm could bring light to moderate snowfall to these areas, with some pockets of heavier snow possible. By late Saturday night, the snow will start spreading eastward into the Northeast and Great Lakes region. Some areas could see several inches of accumulation. So if you've got travel plans this weekend, keep that in mind. But that's not all. There's also a chance we could see a second winter storm develop early next week. This one would follow a more southern track, potentially bringing snow to areas that don't typically see much this time of year. The Gulf Coast, Southeast, and even parts of the Carolinas could be in play. But confidence in this scenario is still relatively low. It's one of those situations where we'll have to watch and wait as the models get a clearer picture in the coming days. Even if you're not in the path of a winter storm, the cold itself is going to be a big deal. By Monday morning, actual temperatures in the northern plains could be as low as 25 def, with many areas in the Midwest and Ohio Valley hovering near or below 0 def. The freezing line could even push all the way down to Houston and the Florida Panhandle, which is pretty remarkable for this time of year. And the wind chills, they're going to make it feel even colder in parts of the northern plains and Midwest. Wind chills could be in the 30 def to 40 def range. And in some places, it could feel like 60 def. These are dangerous conditions, so make sure you're taking steps to stay warm and safe. Before we wrap up, I want to emphasize that this is still a developing situation. While the models have been consistent in showing this Arctic blast and the potential for snow, things can always change. That's why it's so important to stay updated. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the latest updates. Over the next few days, I'll be keeping a close eye on how things are shaping up, and we'll bring you the most accurate information as soon as it's available. So there you have it. Oh, a major Arctic blast, the coldest air of the season, and the potential for multiple winter storms, all in the span of the next 10 days. It's going to be a wild ride. So make sure you're ready. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you in the next video.